All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome in. We are back with the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. I am back as of about 2 o'clock in the morning from Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl. Such a great week. So happy I went. Just was really good to meet some of the viewers out there and reconnect with a bunch of other draft analysts, and of course get to see the practice live, see what these players look like up close and personal. So just such a great week, and I'm really excited to reflect upon what I've seen both in person there, also via the coaches film that they fortunately send out to everyone that's down there. So really excited to get into that. That's going to be the second portion of the show today. We're also going to start by talking about all of the coaching hires. Was just getting pinged left and right, and I felt bad that I wasn't really able to make content this week because there was a lot going on in the NFL, a lot of staff movement, new coaches getting hired. So we are going to break all of the brand new head coaching hires down, talk about some of the big coordinator moves as well. So that's all going to be included here. We'll see where we're at timing-wise. I'm going to play mailbag stuff by ear, hopefully at least for the super chat people here watching live on YouTube. Hopefully at the end of the show, I can get to at least some super chat questions to show it back to you guys who are showing your support here during the live podcast. But before we get started, I want to let you guys know this show is brought to you by my amazing supporters on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where right now the draft season is upon us, you can get access to the full TFG Draft Insider package. That means you're getting access to my draft board as we fill out player profiles there, strengths, weaknesses, comps, individual grades for all of their traits, all of it in there, scheme fits, you name it. Going to be up to about 400 players on there when all is said and done. So you'll get access to that. You'll get access to exclusive film breakdowns. Currently have one up on all of the quarterbacks I've evaled so far, other than Sam Howell. Going to be doing Matt Corral later on this week. We've got Thibodeau, Hutchinson, lots of great film content exclusive to you there on Patreon. So if you want to show your support, you want to get access to the full TFG Draft Insider package, head over to patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. It's the best time of the year to support the channel and get exclusive content. Also, for the live crowd out there, you're going to see that SeatGeek promo code there. I know every single one of you watching this show already purchased your Super Bowl tickets for like $6,000, $7,000 or whatever it is. You're probably taking the whole family out there because I know how you guys roll. But if you haven't dropped that $12, $18K yet on your Super Bowl tickets, you can save $20 on that purchase. Jesus Christ. But seriously, if you're buying tickets, concerts, games, whatever it may be, can support the channel that way. Promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. Best place to buy your tickets as well. And let's hop on into the good stuff. Let's talk some football. Great show ahead of us here today. And we're going to start by talking about the coaching hires. And no particular order here, but let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have hired Doug Peterson. And I was getting pinged left and right when this happened, and Doug Peterson, former head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl winning head coach for the Eagles. And I was getting pinged left and right because I was really one of the first people out there during that 2020 season that was very outspoken about what I was seeing for the Eagles that year. Like week 7, week 8, I kept watching the games for the Eagles, and I was like, this is the worst coached team in the NFL. One of my famous lines was, they led the league in, pardon my French, snap to what the fuck is going on plays, where they snap the ball, you got linemen running downfield on RPOs, running backs running the wrong way on screens, guys pulling into each other, Carson Wentz throwing the ball where there's no receiver in the area, constantly players just like not even knowing the damn play call. And that is just inexcusable if your head coach is an offensive-minded guy. And I started calling that out like week 7, week 8. And I'm like, Frank Reich's gone. The offensive line has fallen apart. They haven't put the talent around Doug Peterson that he had when he won that Super Bowl. And I was like, Doug Peterson's the worst coach in the NFL right now. And sure enough, it kept going as the year went on, and Carson Wentz became more and more broken. That's the other thing, is you look at what happened to Carson Wentz when Reich left. Year after year, he got worse and worse and worse. And this is the guy that's supposed to fix Trevor Lawrence. I don't like the hire. He ended up getting fired for that season. It was one of the worst coaching efforts of the last few years. And Jags fans or whoever are coming at me like, he won a Super Bowl. How can you say they were the worst coach team in the league? No, they weren't in 2017 when I told people to bet 66-1 odds on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl that year. One of my original great takes on this channel. Like, that team was stacked. They were loaded. People don't realize how much that team had. They had enough talent on that team to go on a Super Bowl run with Nick Foles as their quarterback. Like, seriously, go look at those rosters. You had Frank Reich, as your offensive mind. And as the pieces fell apart, you're stuck with Doug Peterson not elevating anything there. It's like Mike McCarthy all over again, post Green Bay. It's just such a bland hire. Now, Doug's a great dude. He is a leader. He's going to bring stability or whatever. But really, you're talking about one of the few head coach candidates that wasn't a complete, random hire, that was willing to work with Trent Baalke, the general manager. And that's really what this is all about for the Jags is the ownership putting them behind the 8 ball with this whole Trent Baalke situation. So their general manager, Trent Baalke, comes from the Niners. They hire him 4 years ago. They've been through just as many head coaches as many years as he's been there. And for whatever reason, I heard today that Shad Khan, the general manager or the owner of the team, was just too lazy to go on a GM search. Like, what? Sell the team, dude, if you're too lazy to just start a new process for a new GM. It's really a shame what's going on in Jacksonville. And I just, nothing against the Jags, but I just don't see this working out with Baalke and Doug Peterson. I didn't feel great about the Urban Meyer thing working out. I feel even worse about this. Now, we'll see, what they do with their coordinators. Matt Nagy going down there would make a ton of sense. I don't know. Maybe that's a good staff. You got 2 former head coaches working together on the same page with that scheme, with that Andy Reid tree. In theory, that is a type of offense that Trevor Lawrence can have a lot of success with. A lot of RPOs, which he was really effective with at Clemson, and quick hitting West Coast concepts. In theory, the scheme that those 2 guys run is a good fit for Trevor Lawrence. So it's not all bad. There's a world where it works out because Trevor Lawrence has this baseline of talent that's just so good. But I'm not betting on this thing to work out at all. And let's not forget about the fact that they still have nothing to work with on the defensive side of the ball other than Josh Allen. So that's my thoughts on the hire. I guess I'll give grades on these things. I would go D+ on the Doug Peterson hire. It's just such a mediocre move, and you compound that with the Trent Baalke stuff. It's just I don't know how you could be excited about this if you're a Jags fan. Thank you to Alex for the super chat. He says, "Here's a little money. The next time the Bengals go to the Super Bowl, hope you guys can afford it." Yeah, man, those ticket prices are just insane. But thank you for the super chat, Alex. Hopefully the Bengals will be making another trip to the Super Bowl. Let's next do some positivity with the New York Giants. And this kind of builds off of a conversation we had about the New York Giants when they let go of Joe Judge. Because it really at a time felt like they were going to be kind of this stubborn organization with a lack of self-awareness and just be like, oh, we had injuries. We'll give our former first-round quarterback another year. Joe Judge showed some promise in year one, and just kind of run it back next year. And it was like, where is that going to take you? To 6 wins next year, and then you fire Joe Judge? Like, let's speed this thing up. Let's get there now instead of just wasting your time for a season. 1 second. But yeah, like they move on from Joe Judge, and now they have an opportunity to speed this thing up. And when that happened, I said, let's wait and see what they do, because they could go and hire the next Urban Meyer of a candidate and just be back at square one with a bad coach. But they probably got the best candidate of the last 2 years to be their head coach in Brian Daboll. And I know they're kind of in the spotlight right now with the whole Brian Flores situation. It sucks for Flores, the phony interview thing. It's an unfortunate effect of the Rooney Rule. The Giants knew they had to hurry if they were going to get Brian Daboll. I don't blame them for bringing Daboll in as fast as they could and committing to him as fast as they could. By rule, they have to interview Brian Flores. Every team has to interview a minority head coach candidate. So it's a really tough topic. I really don't feel like diving into it. I feel like I'm not, equipped to deal with that whole storyline. I'm going to let people that have spent a lot more time thinking about it, that are much more connected, kind of handle that topic. But regardless of all of that, the Giants got the dude, Brian Daboll. See, I just pulled a Bill Belichick and mixed up their names, but Brian Daboll is the premium head coach candidate. He has worked with Nick Saban. He's worked with Bill Belichick. He built that offense with Josh Allen, who was viewed as one of the biggest, raw, moldable ball of clays, boom or bust quarterback prospects of the last few years. Everything he's done is remarkable. I love how he gets vertical with his offense as a play caller. He's got a great rhythm for the most part. And one thing I've always respected about him is he's not going to just, if the run game's not working or he goes into a game and knows that he has a disadvantage in the run game, he's not going to just run the ball 20 times because he's supposed to. He'll literally come out and run the ball 5 times in a game if he needs to. And there's other weeks where he's really creative with the QB run game. And I just think he's very good at identifying schematic advantages that his team has. He's very good at opening up the offense vertically, and he's very good at scheming protections as well, which is something you'll notice when you watch the Bills. Their protections on play action and on vertical concepts, sometimes they bring in other blockers. Sometimes it's just making sure everyone's on the same page. But he blocks it up so they can push the ball downfield. And for the New York Giants to have that, that's huge because their offensive line has been a complete disaster. So Brian Daboll was the best hire that the New York Giants possibly could have had. And when they fired Joe Judge, I was like, let's pump the brakes. Let's see what they do. And this was like, yes, man, this is optimism for the New York Giants. And it actually gets even better because they pair him with Joe Schoen, new GM, coming from the Buffalo organization. And one thing that they are going to focus on is line play. And they've got pretty good D-line play for the Giants, but they're going to focus on offensive line. And I feel pretty much as good about saying this than any other, when it comes to who certain teams will be drafting. I would bet my channel that the Giants draft an offensive lineman in the first round with one of their 2 first-round picks because they don't have free agent money to spend at that spot, and it is a glaring need, and it's a front office that has said publicly that's where they're going to focus, and they need to spend money there, and it's a good class for the most part in the first round. So the Giants will be adding at least 2 offensive linemen in the draft, and I feel damn confident in that. And then they actually have some pieces to work with. They can give a fair evaluation of Daniel Jones, whether they should pay him, can they survive with Daniel Jones and maybe get him for like a mid-tier contract. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now, but can they get Daniel Jones at $24 million and buck this trend of, oh, your quarterback's up, guess you got to pay him $40 million now. Like maybe they can leverage that in a situation where they have a really good core around Daniel Jones and they don't have to just, sell the farm just to pay for him. So I'm very intrigued what's going to happen with the Giants offensively. And what's even better is it sounds like they're going to retain Patrick Graham, who's a premium defensive coach. I love his scheme. I've talked a lot about how they get very multiple, the 3-3-5 odd stuff that they do. If they retain Graham, you can make a case that that's a top 3 schematic pairing in the league and maybe a top 3 coaching room in the league. They also got Mike Kafka, rising quarterbacks coach up in Kansas City, who, if Bieniemy would have gotten a job within the last 2 years, Mike Kafka would already be the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. So they are building a freaking staff for the New York Giants, and I just feel pretty good that they're going to get this thing right. Now, it might take some time. Again, the Daniel Jones situation is not an ideal spot to be in, but man, it's a good feeling for the New York Giants. Now, we'll see if Patrick Graham stays or not. That's definitely not official, but that's what I would be pushing for if I was them. With just, defense is fine. Keep everything in place there. All right, Minnesota Vikings. They went with Kevin O'Connell, and they also made a GM trade, a GM move to get Kwesi. I just know him as Kwesi. It's Kwesi. Is it Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is the full name? I just call him Kwesi. That's what everyone in the Senior Bowl was calling him. And dude seems super cool, man. Like young. Looks like he's in his 30s. I know he's got an analytics background. He's only been in the league for a little while, but forward thinking. It couldn't be any more opposite of the Mike Zimmer era, complemented by going with the young Sean McVay mind here at head coach. And I think you're going to see an organizational overhaul in Minnesota with the youth movement here at head coach and general manager. And it might not show immediate returns because it is such a dramatic change, and there's going to be a lot of just pieces to reshuffle and puzzle pieces to refit. But I do like the direction. I think in general, you're going with a more open-minded general manager and offensive-minded head coach, where I'm always going to prefer hiring the offensive guy, just because the Minnesota Vikings are no better example of if and when you hit on that offensive coordinator, he's gone. Like someone else is going to hire that guy as their head coach, and the Vikings saw 2 of them in the last 3 or 4 years with Pat Shurmur and then Kevin Stefanski. Well, now if Kevin O'Connell's good, he's not going anywhere, and it's also the same system. They've always been in this Shanahan tree, so it's not like these guys are going to have to learn an entire new offense. I think offensively, it should be pretty seamless with Kevin O'Connell, and it makes a ton of sense why they wanted to stay in that Shanahan tree. I've talked to a lot of Vikings fans about this, live in Minnesota, so I have a lot of these conversations, but some people were saying Bieniemy or who are some of the other top offensive-minded, like Doug Peterson or Josh McDaniels, like any of these other big offensive-minded guys. And I'm like, well, unless you want to totally blow this thing up, you kind of got to stay in the Shanahan system when you think about it, because the Vikings have spent all of these resources on move blocking linemen, right? Brian O'Neill, you've got the center, Bradbury, Ezra Cleveland, your left tackle, you just spent a first-round pick on, what's his name, out of Virginia Tech, Christian Darrisaw. Literally, they've invested everything in the offensive linemen and these guys that can run these wide zone blocking schemes. You have money invested in Dalvin Cook, who's great in wide zone blocks. Justin Jefferson, very comfortable in this system. Most importantly, the difference between Kirk Cousins in this system and any other system is incredible. I mean, Kirk, for whatever you want to criticize Kirk Cousins for, he's very good in play action. He's one of the best play action quarterbacks in the league. And you talk about that 15 to 30 range, passing yardage wise, he is excellent in that area. Very similar like Ryan Tannehill in the same system. So to stick with this offense makes a ton of sense, because if you went with any of these other more traditional West Coast style offenses, you're risking that entire setup crumbling offensively. And offense is not a problem for the Vikings. We'll see what they do defensively. I don't know if they've named a defensive coach yet. It's a pretty big mess on that side of the ball. But it was time to move on from Zimmer. So I do like the general direction of the Minnesota Vikings. They've got some tough decisions. You've got Kirk Cousins, obviously. You have kind of got to figure out a long-term replacement for Adam Thielen, who I do think is on the back nine, if you will. And then obviously defensively, you got like Danielle Hunter. You've got all these veterans. How do they fit into the new system? And they're kind of a purgatory team, right? So it could be a long game here. It could be a quick turnaround. Interesting offseason ahead, and an interesting season to see what they could be next year, especially if Aaron Rodgers leaves the Packers. All of a sudden, they could win the North with 9 or 10 wins next year. So I am a fan of the Vikings hires. I don't know. I wouldn't say there's anybody other than like Nathaniel Hackett who would have been a better hire for the Vikings. But, Kevin O'Connell, Nathaniel Hackett, very comparable types of hires. Same system, same type of guy. So there's the Vikings. We might as well talk about the Denver Broncos now, who did hire Nathaniel Hackett. And I can almost copy and paste everything I just said about offensive-minded head coach, a system that works. It's very comparable. I like the hire for the Broncos. They need to figure out the quarterback situation. And it's basically Rodgers or Deshaun Watson. I don't know. I really don't know what they're going to end up with at that position. But what I do know is you've upgraded your play calling and a scheme. You're going to have these receivers back next year. You're going to be able to really unleash Javonte Williams, an offensive line that's pretty underrated. They just need a right tackle, and they're going to have one of the better offensive lines in the league. So they're really setting up. And I by the way, I thought Nathaniel Hackett was more qualified than O'Connell, because Hackett was the offensive mind in Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, and he understands a different scheme that they ran back there. He hasn't always been a Shanahan guy, right? So it's kind of like Kevin Stefanski when he went to Cleveland, where, yes, he's a Shanahan scheme coach with play action and wide zones and all that stuff, but he has a background of knowledge working under different head coaches where he can bring stuff out and throw different left hooks at you from his old memory. So I do want to clarify that I do think Nathaniel Hackett was a better candidate and one of the premium candidates out there. So that I do look at this very similar to when the Browns hired Kevin Stefanski. I think it's an excellent move, and I think it's going to work out as long as they get a talented quarterback in the building. So whether it's signing or trading for a Rodgers or Deshaun Watson, I don't think Russ is going to be on the market, in all seriousness. Maybe it's Derek Carr's probably not available, but maybe Kirk Cousins becomes available. I don't know what the answer is. That's where it gets so tough. But if they can figure that out, or maybe they hit on someone in the draft, which seems unlikely after the Senior Bowl, but it's a dream scenario for a quarterback. It's like they're setting you up for success there. So I love the hire for the Broncos. That one was pretty straightforward, really. Then we got the Chicago Bears hiring Matt Eberflus. And if you were going to go the defensive route, I do think Matt Eberflus was by far like one of the best defensive option, and just in general, one of the 3 best head coach candidates on the market. You know, him and Dable, to me, have done outstanding work where they've been and on both sides of the ball. But Eberflus is a defensive guy. I thought he should have gotten a head coaching job at least last year, if not the year before that. The Colts roster has no business being a top 10 defense year in, year out, yet they constantly get guys stepping up out of nowhere. Your Kenny Moores, your Grover Stewarts, Julian Blackman, Isaiah Rodgers this year. They're constantly getting guys to step up. Other than like edge rush has been a problem, but that's a talent thing for me. I think Matt Eberflus is a fantastic candidate and a good fit for the Bears in general. Like, I can't wait to see what he looks like with an actual pass rush with Robert Quinn and Khalil Mack, getting back to their roots, by the way, as hand-in-the-dirt edge rushers, getting Roquan Smith in a system that has basically had Darius Leonard put out like Hall of Fame stats every year. I think Roquan Smith's a more talented player than Darius Leonard. In this system, it could pop off. They're going to have to fix that secondary a little bit, but I really think Matt Eberflus is going to put together an excellent defense for the Bears. But it's risky to go with a defensive coach for all of the reasons I've laid out before. I will say, I think they got it right with the offensive coordinator, specifically because of scheme. So I don't even know how many times on average per podcast I talk about the Kyle Shanahan scheme, but it's because literally half the teams in the league run this right now. But if you need a refresher, and the Bears, by the way, hired Luke Getsy, the quarterback's coach from Green Bay, to come in and run the Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay offense. But what this means is wide zone running, play action boots, and an emphasis on receivers who can get open over the middle of the field and have good run after the catch ability, because these offenses off of play action run all of these concepts with, double crossing routes with a post and a crosser underneath. Sometimes you'll hit them with the crosser and then you'll fake the post and run a flag route off of that. You can just go two crossers straight up, but it's heavy protections, play action, and it can lean into the mobility of your quarterback because of bootlegs. And I said this about Justin Fields coming out. It's why I said the Atlanta Falcons with Arthur Smith, who runs that offense in Atlanta, would have been just a dream fit. And I've talked a ton about how Matt Nagy's offense was a miserable fit for Justin Fields, because the reality is with Justin Fields, his weakness or something he doesn't like to do is getting rid of the ball quickly. And Matt Nagy's offense, at the core of it, is more of that spread West Coast offense where your passing game in a lot of ways is your run game, with slant flats, quick games, stick, RPOs, screens. Like, that's not Fields. Fields wants to hold the ball. He wants to get on the move. He wants his eyes downfield. And now he's going to be able to do that in this offense. He's in the same offense that Kyle Shanahan wanted to put Trey Lance in. And it's going to be a perfect schematic fit. So as long as Luke Getsy, who doesn't have a ton of coaching experience, he's never called plays, as long as he can implement this offense cleanly, which so many coordinators around the league have really been able to do, it should be a good fit for Fields. Defenses are getting better and better at defending this offense, because so many guys are running it. And I think it's been shown that the teams that can't pivot when they need to can get stuck a little bit. Like, we've seen this massive, for example, we've seen this massive rise in quarters defense. And that's because it's really easy to trade off these route combinations out of a cover 4 defense. So that's been a reaction to all of these Shanahan offenses. So it's not as simple as just running those concepts and you're good to go. You still need to be very creative. So it's not like he's a lock or anything, but I think it was really smart to look at that scheme in Green Bay and say, let's give Fields that to work with. So I do really like that. The Bears are going to need another receiver that can really help them in that offense. I like Darnell Mooney, but they're going to need to find another guy that can separate down the field if this is going to work really well. But in general, I think the Bears did a solid job. I would have rather they get an offensive-minded head coach, because long-term you're going to lose that guy if he's good. But in general, I like Eberflus a lot. I'm not going to shred the Bears for it. I think the Getsy hire was good process. So I would give the Bears a good B plus for the move, maybe even an A minus. I don't know. I don't really have any heavy criticism of it other than the whole I prefer an offensive-minded coach. Okay, then we have the Las Vegas Raiders. Should be the last team that I haven't talked about here. They go with Josh McDaniels, right? That's official. I was in Mobile, so I know I saw that. Let me just confirm it, because seriously, this week was crazy, man. Josh McDaniels, yes, that's official. Okay. I like the fit. It makes a ton of sense. This offense with Derek Carr, Darren Waller, a pretty poor offensive line, Hunter Renfrow, Josh Jacobs, this is Derek Carr's scheme fit. Quick hitting, West Coast, option routes, ability to read a defense. It's like a neutered Tom Brady style of play. Makes a ton of sense. And for me, it's like Derek Carr, there's no way he goes anywhere with this hire, because I can imagine that Josh McDaniels looks at Derek Carr and he's like, he's the perfect quarterback for my system. I don't need anything other than a guy that can dissect the defense quickly, get the ball out, and let Renfrow, Waller, Jacobs fight for tough yardage after the catch. And we're gonna continue to play good defense here. I like this hire a lot. I really do. I think Josh McDaniels has shown a lot of self-awareness, talking about why things didn't work out in the past. He had too much roster control, tried to do the whole Belichick way thing. I think he's learned a lot and is going to be more personable, and it's an upgrade for them. So I like the hire. I still don't know if they're going to get out of purgatory with Derek Carr. That's a different conversation, but I'm a fan of the move. It makes a ton of sense, and I don't have too much else to say on the Raiders front there other than good job. I think it's a great fit. All right, so let's now transition to some draft talk. Senior Bowl, man. Really fun time down there. I'm going to do my winners and losers, or my risers and fallers. I'm just going to start by talking about the quarterbacks, because there's 6 quarterbacks there. 5 of them are in consideration for the first round. So I just want to talk about each one individually. No offense to Bailey Zapp. He's going to get drafted. I think he did everything he could to solidify himself as one of the top day 3, fourth round probably for Bailey Zapp. I'd be a little surprised if he went earlier, but I also haven't watched his film yet. But no offense to Bailey Zapp. He's going to be drafted. He'll be a backup, and maybe it works out. I don't know. But the other 5 guys here, we got Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Carson Strong, Desmond Ridder, and Sam Howell. So I'm just going to go in that order and talk about how their week went. And I've now finished all of these guys' evaluations as well. Now, I don't want to give up too much because I am doing my top 10 quarterbacks grades video next week. And I still don't have like these guys in the order that I feel great about, but just a little bit about some of their strengths and weaknesses and what they look like this week. Also, Tanner, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, who do you have winning the Super Bowl right now? I have the Rams currently. I think if you want my analyst pick, I would go Rams, but I will be cheering for the Bengals because I really want to see them win. And of course, my wife is a Bengals fan, and I'm a bit of a Bengals fan now. So I think Bengals have a good chance. And go Bengals. But thank you for the super chat. Let's get back to the quarterbacks. Malik Willis had a big week, and it's not a huge surprise. Now, he did something that the other quarterbacks didn't do, and that was just kind of show up all 3 days. The first day, he missed some throws, as did all of these guys. But as the week went on, he was the guy constantly giving his receivers a chance in one-on-ones and making plays without overthrowing balls in the team drills. So really the way I look at it is Willis, I think the coaches liked him. He had a good energy about him. I don't know how like interviews went and all that stuff. That's a big part of the process. But he, I would say, slightly improved his stock, while the other guys, I think, all actively hurt their stock. And I think we've seen a ton of Malik Willis hype this week. It's been taking over Twitter, right? And some of it's justified, but I think it's also a massive cheerleader effect. You guys know the cheerleader effect? It's from some movie. I don't know if it was like anyway, I can't remember what movie this was from, but it's the cheerleader effect is in like high school, an attractive girl will intentionally become friends with like non-attractive girls, and it makes her look more attractive. Anyway, it's a thing that I remember, but that's the way it feels like with Malik Willis. Like, he's standing out because everyone else looked so bad, and you're getting extra hype because of that. It's the Senior Bowl is very much set up for a quarterback with traits to shine. And I talked about this for those that have not watched my Malik Willis film video on YouTube that I did last week. My leading point was he's accurate. Like, he's not Josh Allen coming out. He's not Lamar Jackson coming out. He has a genuinely accurate ball, which is going to give him a nice baseline. But it's from How I Met Your Mother. Thank you, Max Stewart. I knew it was from something. But the one thing about the Senior Bowl is it's very much set up in a way that, like, if you have problems reading defenses, or you scramble too early, or you don't throw with anticipation, it's very much set up in a way that you're going to be able to hide those things, the things that you can't hide in a game, even on Saturday for the Senior Bowl game, because the defense is running vanilla coverages, right? Like, they're not going to be disguising a bunch of zones and running different blitzes and throwing everything that he's going to get. Like, it's like processing defenses on an elementary level when you're at the Senior Bowl. And for the most part, all you're talking about here is throwing the ball one-on-ones. So, like, I'm just saying it sets Malik Willis up. And in that film breakdown, I showed all this stuff with Malik Willis where he'll make really stupid mistakes. He doesn't really read defenses. There's a lot of film issues with Malik Willis that teams are still going to have to overcome before he becomes consensus QB1. And I could see, as we remove ourselves from the Senior Bowl, he kind of comes back to earth a little bit once people get back into his game film, because there's still a lot of issues there. Now, from a traits perspective, he's the best one from a traits perspective. He's the most athletic one. He has the strongest arm. I was surprised by that. I think his arm looked better than Carson Strong's, which was surprising to me. And we'll talk about Carson Strong. I was a little bit disappointed in the arm talent there. Still very, very good. But I thought it was going to be like an FU arm. We'll get there. And I think his accuracy is probably the best out of these 6 guys. So he's got a nice baseline of traits. If you like the character, the work ethic, and you think you can coach him up, he's probably going to be QB1 for a lot of teams. And he helped his stock this week. So that's Malik Willis. And then you got Kenny Pickett, who coming into this week was like consensus QB1. I wouldn't be surprised if if Kenny Pickett is starting to fall out of the first round for a lot of teams. Seriously. He had a great year. He's a smart guy. He's tough. He's athletic. He's pretty accurate. But here's the problem. Before the week even started, it was going around that, he's got 8.5-inch hands. And no starting quarterback in the NFL has under 9-inch hands. You got to remember, when you go from college to the NFL, the ball gets bigger. I don't know the exact size, but it gets bigger. And he throws with gloves for that reason. He didn't measure his hands because he's claiming there's some kind of double-jointed thing that he's doing what he can to improve his measurement at the combine. All I know is his arm looked very lackluster. He missed a ton of throws with the grown football. And in the rain, it was like, if you play in an outdoor stadium, I don't think you can draft this guy. And what happens if you draft him and you got to go to Lambeau, or you got to go to Heinz Field, or you got to go up to New York, Baltimore, New England, in cold? Like, what if you get a snow game, or what if it's raining outside? Like, you are fucked. Like, seriously, he couldn't throw the ball. So you pair that with something he does on film that drives me crazy. He bails from clean pockets more than like Jalen Hurts does. I don't like his pocket presence. Now, if he sees the rush, he can make some really good plays. So I don't remember a quarterback hurting his stock as much as anybody has at the Senior Bowl. It was the talk of the town was like, you can't take this guy in the first round, can you? And that's the type of conversations that are going on in the NFL, because coming in, it was like he's got the best tape. Week in, week out, the best combination of like playmaking, decision-making, ability to read defenses. His accuracy was pretty good on tape, but again, that football's getting bigger at the next level. And no starting quarterback has under 9-inch hands. It's a serious issue. It's going to be interesting how far he falls, because he could still go in the top 10. If he went in the 4th round at this point, it would surprise me, but I could see it happening. I don't think that happens, but it was very, very concerning. So I still need to kind of sort through what this all means, where I'm going to rank him, but he is very much stock down for myself and for the NFL scouts as well. Okay, then you get to Carson Strong, who had a very polarizing week. There was a lot of missed throws, and I thought Carson Strong was the most accurate quarterback on film. I still think he has a chance to be the most accurate quarterback, but it was just very clear, like Malik Willis can command a football better than Carson Strong. So you like that a lot. Carson Strong currently has the highest film grade for me right now. I think he reads defenses. Again, I think he's accurate. I think his arm is incredibly strong. I like the way he moves in the pocket. But again, he had some accuracy issues this week. Overthrows, especially. Dropped some dimes as well, though. I don't want to make it sound like he was all bad, because he definitely threw some good footballs out there. But the talk of the town with Carson Strong is the knee. injury question marks with Carson Strong because there's these reports about he injured his knee in high school, it screwed up his knee, and then basically his cartilage was gone all of a sudden, and he's been playing on top of that. So I'm not a huge doctor, but the way I understand it is, and maybe we can get Dr. TFGF in here, but the cartilage between the knee is like what protects the bone from butting up against itself and degrading the bone and causing pain, obviously. And, he's been now within the last 2 years, like trying to fix this. And it was so clear as the year went on at Nevada that that's what happened. Because seriously, just watch if you don't have time for his whole season, just watch his first 2 games and then watch his last 2 games of the regular season. And he's not a fast guy, but in the first few weeks, he can move a little bit. He's got a little pep in his step, and he bounces around the pocket and senses pressure. And he steps into his throws and showed a ton of just piss missile throws. Later in the year, it's like he's throwing off his, I guess it was, not putting enough into it because it's his right knee, I believe. Maybe it's his left knee. I'd have to double check this, but not using that leg, couldn't run, was limping around, getting rid of the ball, like hitting checkdowns way too quickly, like just played hurt. And there was no moment where it was like he missed time or any of that. It was just like he was clearly hurt. So that's the concern, is that going to be Carson Strong every year as the season goes on and as his career goes on? Is that knee just going to break down to the point where he can't even walk on it? But he has had a procedure on it where basically they put in a cadaver cartilage, and it's all about whether or not his body accepts the cartilage or do they reject it. And everything I've heard is that that's a very low-risk procedure that a lot of athletes have that has a high chance of working for him. And as long as it accepts the cartilage, this problem should be completely gone. So I'm growing, now that I've understood it and talked to some people down there, I think he's going to clear the medicals more than people think. I thought he moved around pretty well, and he's still, I think, recovering from this thing, which could explain a little bit of the accuracy. Maybe he's a little rusty. Maybe he hasn't been able to throw a lot in the last few weeks, because I really thought his accuracy was better on film than it was this week. So it's just a very interesting situation, because I really do think Carson Strong has the best tape out of any quarterback in this class. And if the knee checks out, I don't think he necessarily hurt his stock this week. I don't think he helped his stock. He was just very up and down. He made some really good throws. So I don't think there was this impression that oh my God, Carson Strong can't play. There was a few throws that he overthrew that you were just like, dang it, I wish he hit that. But it's not like anyone's treating Carson Strong as this lock top 10 pick, right? Like, he's a fringe first round, second round guy. I'm intrigued by him. Then we've got Desmond Ridder. He's all over the place. I like Ritter's tape. He's a smart guy, pretty good pocket presence. He's got some swagger. He's a good athlete. He's the least accurate of these guys. Well, him and Howell are just remarkably inaccurate. But Ridder, it's like when he misses, it's like, whoa, what are you doing? But he also throws really good balls too, and he's got a good arm. I don't know. Ridder, it's just the accuracy stuff. Like, seriously. You get through his tape, and he's just a missed throw waiting to happen, and it was the same thing. Same thing at the Senior Bowl. So it's just like confirmation bias, right? Like, he's going to make 2 beautiful throws, be really good all game, and then all of a sudden he's sailing a slant route over the guy's head, and it's a pick 6 by the safety. Like, you can't it's almost identical to Jimmy Garoppolo's accuracy issues, where like he's pretty good all game, and then he's just freaking sailing balls. So there's not a lot of deep. He can throw beautiful deep balls, but I just don't know how consistently he's going to be able to hit those. So that's just tough to draft in the first round because you don't know if he's going to be able to fix that at the next level. And it's not like he's got these amazing traits to build off of either. Like, he's a good athletic guy with a decent arm, but it's not like you're taking Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson with accuracy issues where it's like, well, maybe you can fix the accuracy stuff, and then you've got like elite athletes. That's not with like great arms. That's not Desmond Ridder. And then Sam Howell, I said Ridder's all over the place. That's his Ridder, at least it's just his accuracy's all over the place. Howell's like literally all over the place. Really tough eval because I think Howell's athleticism and his arm talent are incredibly underrated. I actually think just when you talk about like speed, ability as a ball carrier, scrambling ability, and arm talent, Howell's like 95% of Malik Willis. We'll see what Willis ends up running. I think Willis hits like 4.5 speed personally, maybe sniffs 4.4s. Whereas I think Howell's got like 4.58 speed. Like, I don't think people appreciate how fast and how good with the ball in his hands Howell is. He's built like a running back. He is quick twitch. Like, people keep comparing him to Baker Mayfield because he kind of has the same stature, but he's like a twitched up Baker Mayfield. Like, that's something that really stands out to me about Howell. And the ball flies off of his arm. Like, I really didn't want to do this because I hate doing same team comps, but he is Mitchell Trubisky as a prospect. Athletically speaking and arm talent wise, he's super similar to Trubisky, who never got enough credit for how strong of an arm he was. And Trubisky's a really freaking good runner. Really good runner. Like, when he was starting, he was a top 5 scrambling quarterback in the league. And there's a lot of traits there with Howell. Now, his accuracy, again, is all over the damn place. So I hate that. Like, it was Benjamin Benjamin. Why can't I think of his last name? Just moved to PFF. Benjamin Slolak? Is that it? Anyway, this is driving me insane. Maybe I have too much caffeine in my system or something, but no, it was not Solak. Trevor Sikkema. They used to have the podcast together, so I mix up their last names and my brain just breaks. But it was Trevor. Trevor was saying that he's a deep ball passer that can't throw deep. And that's a great take. Like, that's super true. He wants to push the ball downfield, but he's constantly missing throws. The one thing about Sam Howell is their offense, of all the guys, felt like it put him in the hardest position to succeed. Because I bang out all these guys' tape, right? And when I got to Howell, I was like, wow. Compared to these other guys, he really didn't have a chance. As far as offensive line, on traditional dropbacks, he was constantly running for his life. Felt like they ran an RPO on like every other play. And their deep concepts, like, he just didn't have receivers open very often, especially in the first half of the season. So there's an element of Sam Howell where it's like, if you can just kind of pull him out of there, maybe sit him for a year, let him breathe, because he was just running for his life at North Carolina is basically what it was. And put him back in with a year to like relearn an offense and maybe improve his accuracy a little bit. And another note I have on Sam Howell that is to that point is it felt like watching him, everything was in fast forward. Like, I actually had to check to make sure I didn't have like the speed slider turned up to be at like 1.25 speed on my film, because that's just what it felt like. And maybe that hurt his confidence as a deep ball thrower to the point where he was putting a little bit too much on it, so he wasn't making as many mistakes. I don't know. But it really felt like it was just snap and then panic with him. And some of that's on him. Some of it was he's bailing from clean pockets. He's not navigating pressure. And some of it was like, yeah, he just doesn't have receivers open and his offensive line broke. So his tape is very difficult to evaluate. He's got traits, and that's really all you can go off of. People are going to do a lot of research into like his character and how hard of a worker is he, and is he going to get to the NFL and be that guy that puts in the time that he needs to, because that's all so important. There's a chance that Howell works out, but again, he's just all over the place, and he was all over the place again at the Senior Bowl with his accuracy. But similar to like Strong and Ritter, made some really good throws. So there's a lot of time on the quarterbacks. There's going to be even more quarterback talk next week with my top 10 quarterbacks video. We'll get into that a little more then, and I'll actually put rankings together for those guys there. But those are kind of my thoughts on them right now. And then we're going to wrap up with my risers and fallers from the Senior Bowl. Now, a little disclaimer here. It's impossible to consume everything when you go down there. There's only so much time. There's only so many reps. You've got to physically go from point A to point B to watch these drills. So I make a conscious decision to basically not worry about running backs, linebackers, tight ends, and safeties for a couple reasons. Number one is just the drills that those guys do aren't as effective for a scout. They're doing a lot more just basic drill work. They're doing more like teamwork stuff where they're communicating zones, or like the tight ends are doing run blocking drills. You know, like what I really zero in on is cornerback, wide receiver one-on-ones, and O-line, D-line one-on-ones, because that is going to give you how does this guy do against NFL competition. Everything else, it's just a little bit too much to soak in while you're there. So a lot of incomplete opinions on running backs, linebackers, tight ends, and safeties. I'm not going to get into those guys here on this podcast. I think I can confirm that everybody that goes to the Senior Bowl would agree with me. You're going to the practices to watch wide receiver versus corner one-on-ones, and you're going to watch the O-line, D-line stuff. Now, of course, like the coaches, the scouts, like they want to know how coachable these guys are. They want to see what they do in the drill work. They bring these guys in for interviews. They're going to play in the game on Saturday. Like, it's not like those guys are just wasting their time there. But the media people down there, like, it's really hard to have any takeaways from the other positions, especially during practice. So we are going to talk about wide receivers, corners, O-line, D-line as like my takeaways from the Senior Bowl, because that's what you're kind of there to look at. So let's start at wide receiver. We're going to do the good, and then we're going to do the bad. But good at wide receiver. Christian Watson, wide receiver out of North Dakota State. This guy's 6'5", around 200 pounds, maybe even more than 200. But he's a lengthy 6'5". But that's not bad because he's pretty twitched up for a 6'5" guy, and this was a big week for him. Anytime you have a smaller school guy or a D1 AA guy like Christian Watson is out of North Dakota State, you want to see him come in against a guy from Georgia or a guy from Auburn and see how does he look physically against this guy compared to some of the competition he was doing down there. And he fit the part. He looked the part. And he made himself a lot of money this week because he had a good release off the line of scrimmage. His ball skills were really nice. And he showed some craft in his route running, which was really good to see. Like, if he's going over the middle, like he's got that subtle push-off to create that extra separation. He's really good in the red zone drills. quick feed off the line of scrimmage to beat press. Like, he made himself a lot of money. I don't know how far the hype's going to go here. I bet he's a top 100 player for a lot of people. I would be a little bit surprised if he snuck into like the second round. I guess we'll find out. Like, you know, if he comes out and runs like in the 4.4s and crushes like his 3-cone drills and all that stuff, it could go just like next level here. There's no way he goes in the first round, but like second round maybe. But he, to me, was the most impressive receiver throughout the week. So that was Christian Watson, wide receiver out of North Dakota State. And I'm going to be honest, it's not the best group of receivers this year for the Senior Bowl relative to years past. You know, we've had super deep groups in recent Senior Bowls. This year, not so much. I don't think there's a top 50 receiver here, maybe not a top 75 receiver here. A couple of the guys stood out. Calvin Austin out of Memphis did a great job in one-on-ones. Now, it's not a surprise. You know, kind of reminded me a little bit of Demetric Felton out of UCLA and what he was able to do at the Senior Bowl. That would have been last year. These really quick guys, these easy separators, thrive in these one-on-one deals because it's just you and another guy. You don't have to worry about going over the middle and getting bumped by a linebacker or absorbing a hit by a linebacker or a safety after the catch. You know, the D-back doesn't have help either over the top or inside. It is a true one-on-one, man-to-man coverage situation. When you're a guy like Austin who's quick and fast and has some decent route running, like, you're going to really stand out in these drills. So I do think it's important to understand that aspect of things, but these DBs couldn't cover him, and that's going to work in the NFL. And he's in this mold of guys like, what is it, Deontay Harris for the Saints. I need to just have a go-to list of all these 5'7", 5'8", 5'9" receivers that are thriving in the NFL right now. Because there's a lot of them right now. This has become a trend in the NFL, where in the modern league, where you can't press these guys down the field, you can't hit them after the catch, like you basically can't touch these receivers. So teams are realizing more and more that as long as you have an accurate quarterback, you can put a 5'8" receiver out there, and again, DBs won't be able to cover him. So he's gonna be in that mold. Teams will certainly have their eye on him. Again, he's not like incredibly fast. He's probably a 4.4 speed guy. Like, maybe he sniffs like 4.39, but you're not talking about like Brandon Cooks or anything like that as a deep threat. But in short areas, in the red zone, he's going to be a quick separator in the slot. You can obviously do like design touches, jet sweeps, bubble screens, like really good with the ball in his hands. Like, yeah, Rondale Moore's a good example. Chat, good call. But he's going to be drafted probably like, I'd be surprised if he gets all the way up to like the third round, but he'll be a day 3 pick, like pretty high. And as long as he's in a good situation with a creative play caller, I think he'll be a productive guy in the slot. And then the other guy that stood out to me, which was a pleasant surprise, was Velus Jones out of Tennessee. And you got to remember, there's been a couple guys that have kind of come out of Tennessee, underproduced, but been really good NFL players. And most notably, Marquez Callaway recently. And they don't have the most prolific passing game, let's be honest. Velus Jones, though, like coming in, I was really impressed by how athletic he was for a bigger guy. I think he's like 6 foot 200, which is a good balanced size for a receiver. But I was like, okay, he's fast. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's shifty, but didn't produce in college. And it just kind of begs the question of like, why did he not produce? And he's a senior coming out. Like, what took so long, basically? And you wonder, okay, maybe he's not a great ball winner. Maybe he doesn't have a lot of craftiness to his routes. Maybe he doesn't understand how to be physical through contact and all that stuff. And that wasn't the case in the one-on-ones in Mobile. He had really quick feet off the line of scrimmage. He showed the deep speed. He had a couple of catches in traffic. And you saw him using his arms to separate. There was one play, and by the way, I did a live. Sorry, I just saw a couple of you guys naming some of the small guys in the chat that caught my attention. Yeah, you got Khalif Raymond for Detroit, Isaiah McKenzie for Buffalo. Like, teams are figuring out how to use these guys. But anyway, there's a live film room of me going through the wide receiver cornerback one-on-ones from this morning up on my YouTube under the live section if you want to go check that out after the podcast. But there's a play where the DB pivots to basically he opens up to the outside and is daring Velus Jones to go deep on him and not run the slant inside. But the play call was a slant for Velus Jones. So the way to beat that basically is you have to use your arm to kind of fight through contact a little bit, almost like a pass rusher in a little bit. And you can do that at the line of scrimmage. So he did. He put his left arm on him, got inside of him, and won on the slant route. There's another play down the field where he's on an in-breaker and he does the subtle push-off with his shoulder and his elbow to create a little bit of separation. And that's the stuff you got to do at the next level to separate, as a separator, if that makes sense. But there was some craftiness there that was really good to see, and he was winning some tough catches. So I think it reminds me a little bit of Terry McLaurin, not to the same degree, but similarly, where Terry McLaurin was wildly underused at Ohio State. And I was like, well, he probably just isn't a very polished receiver. It was one of my bigger misses, honestly. I didn't think there was too much there. I thought he was just a kind of fast guy that didn't really understand contact, couldn't win catches, didn't have nuance to his routes. But then he got to the Senior Bowl and everyone was raving about how he was separating. And again, I don't think that Velus Jones is going to be Terry McLaurin, but I could see him getting to the next level and just being a much more productive player because the traits are there. He is an athletic dude. He's probably going to sniff the 4.4s. He's quick. Like his 3-cone and stuff, I would expect to be pretty good. So he passed the eye test for me. So there were the good wide receivers. Let's talk some offensive, defensive line now. Or I guess we should do D-backs and then do the line play. And I mentioned this in the film room, but it's very difficult to stand out if you're a defensive back in these drills. As I mentioned earlier, these are designed for the wide receivers to win and look good. So if you're just making a few plays as a D-back and you're consistently hanging tight, you're standing out from the rest of the competition because 90% of these guys are out here just getting cooked all the time. And you might have a win or two, and that's a good week for the Senior Bowl. Like if you have 8 of these reps or 10 of these reps and you win 2 or 3 out of 10, that's a pretty average week. Now, if you're winning half of them or more than half, you're really going to stand out. So the 2 guys that really stood out to me were Roger McCreary out of Auburn. And this another thing Trevor Sycamore was telling me was Roger admitted that they didn't run zone coverage at Auburn, which is really interesting. It's a very self-aware thing. He's like, just so you know, when we go zone this week in team drill and during the game, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing, especially because they're putting me in the slot a lot where I'm all about it. I'm really excited to learn and get up to speed with zone coverage. But he's just completely straight up honest. He's like, yeah, they stuck me on the outside. It was either cover 1 or a cover 3 match. I don't know zone coverage. And I respect that because he's not afraid of his weakness. And he's like, I'm going to learn this, but unfortunately, I haven't had experience in it. And that showed. But in the one-on-ones where he's running man coverage, it's like, Well, I kind of see why Auburn just stuck you in man coverage all the time, because he is sticky. He's quick. He can press a little bit. Now, he's got shorter arms that people are worried about. I'm not like panicking about it, but it just decreases that margin for error just a little bit. And maybe he's never going to be like this premium corner, but he's quick. He can run man coverage. It reminds me a little bit of like Christian Fulton is kind of my, now Fulton's longer, but just athletically and what he's good at coming out reminds me a lot of Christian Fulton. And he's probably in that range of like, Fulton went in the second. I thought he was a first to a second round talent. Kind of also similar to Campbell out of Georgia last year. Very man-oriented guy. McCreary's going to have to work out really well. He's going to have to run like a 4.4, crush his agility drills because teams are worried about his arm length. But he stood out. And then the other guy, no one's talked about him yet. So I'm excited to say that I have another kind of gem from the Senior Bowl that I'm really excited to get into his tape, and that's Tariq Castro-Fields, corner from Penn State, who probably had the best, at least first 2 days at the Senior Bowl. I haven't done day 3 quite yet, but man, there was nothing he couldn't do. He was pressing. He had He had one of the only D-backs with an interception where he kind of got beat, but this was like a conversation I was having with the chat was, you're going to get beat at corner. It's just going to happen. But something that's so important is composure, mental toughness, makeup speed, and the ability to play in phase when you are stacked on the outside. Stacked being when the receiver gets on top of you and is running away. And in that situation, you can't grab because that's when it becomes very obvious. And that's when you get hit with those pass interferences when you're trailing, the ball's in the air, you're panicking, you don't really know where the ball's coming. The best you can really do in that situation is read the receiver's eyes and run really fast to make up ground. That's what you call makeup speed. Trey Waynes has made a career on makeup speed. He gets beat like every single snap, but because he's fast and good in phase, he's made a career as a decent corner, made a lot of money. But what he does on this play is he sees the ball coming in over his head, and granted the ball's a little bit underthrown, but newsflash, it's very rarely a perfect throw in the NFL, especially 40 yards down the field. So ball's a little bit underthrown. The receiver has to slow down for the ball a little bit, which allows him to catch up. And instead of grabbing him, he puts his hand up and looks up to see where the ball's coming. And he actually, as it's coming in, is able to rip it away from Alec Pierce, who's a damn good physical receiver. That wasn't the only good thing he made, but that was just to see him play in phase like that was really impressive. His press coverage was really good. He was quick for a lengthier guy, showed some decent speed, nothing crazy, but he definitely stood out as a guy that I think can step in and contribute on the outside, as opposed to most of these guys, like I said, it's just really freaking hard to play in the NFL at corner, and especially in these drills. So let's do O-line, D-line, the good. The talk of the town is Trevor Penning, who wasn't like perfect, but people loved his toughness. His pass sets just look the part. He's 6'6.5". He's got those smooth legs. He's really like patient with his hands. A couple moments of like he's kind of leaving his chest exposed to power or caught leaning a little bit, but like for the most part, like looked really good. Nasty run blocker. He has that dickhead mentality that you're looking for in offensive linemen. I always bring this up every year. Like at the end of the day, you're drafting. Like you can nitpick athleticism and technique and all that stuff's important, and pass rush win rate and all this stuff. It's all very important. But at the end of the day, you're drafting a 300-pound man that's got to line up, for 18 plus weeks in a year and beat the shit out of another 300-pound man for 3 hours at a time. That's not for everybody. It's for Trevor Penning. So, like, there's something to that. And he's got the athletic traits to do it. So he stood out as, like, the darling of the Senior Bowl. And absolutely, I think he's probably a first-round guy. Just because he's got the arm length, he's got the athletic ability, looked pretty good as a pass protector. He's going to be a good run blocker. I think someone's going to really like him. And if not a first-rounder, he should be a top 50 guy. Let's see, how many tackles do I have here? I only have one other tackle that kind of stood out to me, and that was Spencer Burford out of UTSA. And he's not like he's probably not even a day 2 guy. He's probably a 4th or a 5th round pick. But for the crop that you were looking at, he had a notable, like, he stood out with his kind of, I guess you'd call it move recognition. Like, he understood what his opponent was trying to beat him with, whether it was a bull rush or an inside move or a cross chop. He was able to, set quickly. It was a nice pass set. And he had the right techniques against the different moves. So, like, someone tried to pull a cross chop off on him, where you're kind of coming across your body, and the only way to beat a cross chop is to attack the guy's outside shoulder. And he did, very cleanly. Like, just excellent punch to the outside shoulder, kept running his feet, bodied him up. I think it was the next rep or maybe the next set of snaps. They try an inside move on him, and he goes, bam, bam, inside. Like, you gotta, if someone's gonna try an inside move on you, you gotta freaking get inside immediately. You don't have time to mess around. You gotta shuffle inside and attack inside and cut off that inside. And it sounds simple, but not everybody does that. And he did it really well. He's only 295 pounds. He's not going to be a great run blocker. He'll be a good move guy for, like, stretch runs and stuff, but, like, he's not really pushing guys off the line of scrimmage, creating a lot of ground. He's not going to latch on for too long. He's not going to be a great run blocker. And I do worry that, like, power rushers like the Rashawn Garys, the Khalil Macks of the world, which, how great is that we can now say that in the same breath and not feel crazy about it. But seriously, like, the guys with 35-inch arms that are just bull rushing specialists, you probably don't want to leave him one-on-one in that situation because he's just not a powerful player. But he's got good technique, and, I never want to compare a guy to David Bakhtiari, but coming out, there was like, David Bakhtiari's too light. He's not going to be able to play at that level. He's not going to be a great run blocker. But he kept working. He put on weight. Now he's like the best pass-protecting left tackle in football. I don't think that Spencer Burford is that's just a next-level thing to expect. But if he can put on a little weight, he could become a good starter. So probably like a 4th or a 5th round guy there. But I just like his baseline of pass protection there. If nothing else, is like a good backup. Then you move inside. So Zion Johnson's just a monster. I think he worked his way into the first round. He's the best guard in this class from what I can tell, other than Ike Mekwonu. But he was definitely the best guard at the Senior Bowl. That was just clear. I mean, he was just, like, so sound. Other than, he's a smaller guy, 6'3", like 310, which is strong enough, is big enough. But they were trying some snaps at center, and he wasn't great at center. There was a notable difference between how comfortable he was as far as using his hands and setting quickly. He's never played it before, but he was staying late after practice to work on his snaps for scouts. But at guard, he was locked down, and the profile on him coming in out of Boston College was, like, great run blocker, but is he going to hold up at his size against powerful pass rushers? And he was going up against the most powerful guys, and just, like, sometimes with guards, you can tell immediately, like, when a guy has the physical the established technique and the physical ability to do that, because it was just okay, out of his stance, aggressive set but not overly aggressive, wide base with running feet, and just fuck you hands, like boom, like he's got it down. I really was impressed by Zion Johnson. He's going to be a really good run blocker as well. I really think he moved his way into the first round. He just seems like a very safe prospect. He's played a ton of games, athletic guy, strong dude for his size. Like, I think he made his way into the first round. So he had a really good week. And then a couple other kind of like day 3 guys that stood out. Dylan Parham, which, chat, you guys got to let me know if he's related to Donald Parham. But Dylan Parham, center out of Memphis, who like always leads the league in run blocking or just running. But big week for him for a variety of reasons, because his college profile on like MemphisRoster.com or whatever had him at like 6'3", 285, which is absurdly light for a center. And he actually played guard, by the way, in college. So he was moving to center this week. But he weighed in at 313, not 285, and he had 33.5-inch arms, which is more than enough for an interior lineman. So all of a sudden, like, he's stronger and is going to have length to handle power, which is huge because he's a great run blocker, an experienced pass protector, and he played well. Now, he wasn't perfect. He lost some reps for sure. He's still a smaller frame. I would worry about, like, the Chris Joneses of the world, the Kenny Clarks of the world, like, overpowering him with just size and power. But for the most part, I thought he had quick feet, strong hands, going to be a really good run blocker, should be a great fit for those Shanahan systems. Half the league runs that scheme right now. So a guy that can get on the move, run block, be a solid pass protector. He stood out pretty well. And just having those measurables was big for him, because that was the thing, is like, is this guy an NFL body? And he is. And then the last offensive lineman that kind of stood out to me was Cole Strange out of Chattanooga. And similar to what it said about Spencer Burford, in that, he's not a top 100 pick, but I think he's and maybe he's like 100. He might be like a 4th round guy, but I think he's a player with a really nice floor. This guy had started 4 years at Chattanooga. He's a physical guy. Off the field, he's a psychology major, perfect, like 4.0 grade the whole way around. Strong hands, good run blocker, relatively solid athlete. Like, I think you're getting a really high character guy that has that chip on his shoulder coming out of Chattanooga. I don't know. I watched him play. I was like, that's an NFL guard. Like, he might not ever be a superstar, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of is out of Kansas State. He ended up going in the 2nd round, probably a better player, but just remind me a little bit of the Broncos left guard. I can't think of his name right now. Let me this is gonna bug me. Oh, come on. This is annoying. I just want Broncos Hour Lads. Brian Waiters? Brian something. Sorry, guys. I need to know it. I won't be able to go on with the show if I don't. He was injured this year. That's why he's not showing up. Dalton Reisner. Thank you. Gosh. When I can't think of a name, it just drives me insane. Yeah, kind of Dalton Reisner-esque. Probably not quite as strong, but I feel like he's got a good floor as either a guard or a center. and probably like maybe use like the compensatory third round pick or fourth rounder on the guy. But yeah, good, strong hands, aggressive player. I like him. And now we've got the lineman, the D lineman, and only one edge like really caught my attention and like stood out. There's a lot of talk about how good this edge group is. A lot of those guys weren't here. Because you got Hutchinson, Karlaftis, Thibodeau, and the other Ojabo. So you already have 4 first-round guys. And then Jermaine Johnson from Florida State comes out and just lights the whole thing on fire. Like he was there day 1, day 2. He's like, "See you guys. We'll see you in Indy for the combine. Been a great week. Peace." Like, he just crushed everything he did. This guy's 6'4", 6'5", long arms, 260 pounds. He's not like Montez Sweat as an athlete, who would be like a physical comp there. He's not going to come out and run like a 4.5, but he might run in the 4.6s. And he won inside on a quick move. He's got fast, strong hands. Dominated as a run defender all week in the drills and in team. He was bull rushing dudes. He like literally one of the more dominant Senior Bowl performances of the last few years. Just crushed it. So that was Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. Like, I think locked up being a first round pick. Unless he tests like terribly. Like, again, I don't think he's an elite athlete, but should be a pretty good one. And it seems very clear that he's going to be a good pass rusher in the NFL. Now, he had like a weird career. He started JUCO in the Last Chance U conference. So I don't know, I don't know if he just wasn't good at school or if he had, because usually like everybody that ends up in those situations had some kind of off the field problem early on. So I don't know what it was, but he got out of it. He went to Georgia for a couple years, had like all of the edge rushers ahead of him, and he rotated and was productive when he was there, but he transferred out to get to Florida State where he would start, and he dominated at Florida State this year. Really good year. So I think he locked up first round for Jermaine Johnson. The most dominant performance of the week. And then on the interior, a couple guys with big weeks. So you've got Devontae Wyatt. He's the other Georgia interior guy because everyone's talking about the big guy. What's his name? Davis or something. But Wyatt's like the guy with the juice and the get off, the quickness on the inside. He won with a cross chop move that, especially for interior guys to have a cross chop like that. For those of you that don't know, that's Aaron Donald's go-to, and it takes a combination of traits. You have to have get off to get in position quick enough. You have to have fast, strong, active hands. You have to have bend and speed to turn the corner. So basically what a cross chop is, the best, I'm sorry for the audio folk, but I'll do my best job, especially from an inside move here, is you are basically trying to turn the offensive lineman's technique against him. So the offensive lineman's going to set right and in a balanced way and kind of wait to see how you're going to attack him. So the cross chop is you're actually coming from the opposite arm. So let's pretend my microphone here is the offensive lineman's hands, right? So you're coming over this way, and you're using that to basically swipe and get the offensive lineman off balance. Because if you're over here, there's nothing else for them to hit if you're coming quick and fast. So if you're coming over here and then you're going to, do one of these, push him inside, and then you're basically going to use your left arm. You're like, if you're just doing this with me, you're using then your left arm to continue pushing them. But that's like, if you just do that, if you do that motion, you go like this, and then you are trying to bend around the guy while pushing with the other arm, like you're in a weird position. Like, I'm already starting to get uncomfortable just doing that sitting in my chair. So you have to have like agility, flexibility, speed, and bend to then get around the guy. And that's why Aaron Donald is like the best player ever, because his cross chop, guys don't know what to do with it. And he pulled it off, like clean, easy win. Beautiful Devontae Wyatt. And, he showed other stuff. He showed some power, but just looked like a guy that's going to be able to rush the passer from the inside with some power and some finesse to him. So that was a big week for Wyatt, who's probably going to be in the top 40 picks. Like, if he doesn't go round 1, it'll probably be early day 2. And then Travis Jones out of UConn, who, from what I can tell, I'm excited to watch his tape, but looks like Falorenzo Fadukasi out of UConn, but a little bigger. Like, he's 6'5", 330 pounds. He's huge. And he was dominant run defender out of UConn, but he can push the pocket now. Like, he's got some get off. He's got the long arms. And at that size, like, if you have get off and long arms, you're going to be able to push the pocket. So just, to me, screams like 10-year starter as a defensive tackle. Maybe never going to be like a premium pass rusher because he's not like super quick. It's basically just bull rush for him. But if he's a great run defender and a good bull rusher, a good pocket pusher, you can have a hell of a career and make a lot of money doing that. Probably not a first-round guy. I would say almost assuredly not. But probably a second-round guy, maybe a top 50 pick right there, Travis Jones. Had a really good week. Just kind of looked like a man amongst boys for most of the week. All right, and then we've got some of the guys that were fallers this week. Unfortunately, not everybody plays great. Some guys do disappoint. So at wide receiver, it's someone I made a TikTok about. So for those of you that follow my TikTok, Deontay Drummond. I always forget his first name, but hang on. It's a weird first name. It's Dontario Drummond. I really was excited to see him because it's hard not to think about A.J. Brown when you watch him. 6'1", 220 pounds, speed. Like, at his top speed, he's a really tough guy to bring down. He's good after the catch. Like, very Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown-esque plays where he's catching the ball over the middle and defenders are just falling over trying to tackle the guy. And it's very possible at his game speed, he's a guy that's just going to not be a great practicer. He's not going to be a great one-on-one guy, but in certain schemes and setups, he'll thrive. But in the drills, he did not show that juice. He was really slow out of his breaks. The acceleration, I don't think he hit his top speed once all week. He is stiff. If you're running like a hitch or an in route, he couldn't separate. And it was really sad to see because I loved kind of my first initial look at him. But yeah, I think he's a 6th round or later guy. I don't think he's going to test all that well. He might run a decent 40 because, hopefully he can get top speed pretty quickly out of a 40. So he could hit 4.5, which would be a decent time for him. But he's not Deebo Samuel. He's not A.J. Brown. He turns 25 in the fall. He's a late bloomer. It was just a disappointing week. He had some nice catches down the sideline. It wasn't a complete waste, but he just didn't show. I had high expectations for him, and he didn't show what I thought he could. And then one of the worst performances of the week, and I got to apologize, Romeo Dubs out of Nevada. And I got to apologize because I tweeted, I was like, oh, he looks great. He looks like, he's got this, I said like Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams-esque release, like just a stupid tweet, honestly. I saw like a couple drills. They were doing some release work like before the one-on-ones. And there was like 2 drills where like he looked like really quick feet, exploded out of there. I had seen his film because I did Carson Strong, and he was like really good in those short areas. In the same way that like Keenan Allen wins. And all of a sudden I go and watch his one-on-ones, and he had just a horrific week. Like strangely bad week. No separation, bodied off the line of scrimmage and press. So there goes he's got great release takes. And drop issues. Like, he looked terrible. Absolutely terrible. And maybe it's just a bad week. Like, his film's good. I think he'll still get drafted. But, God, this is a guy that could have gotten into day 2 of the draft, and he may have worked himself out of the draft just with this week. It was that bad. So I feel like that was one of my worst tweets like of the year, was saying he was a standout after like the first day and a half. Because, God, the second I turned on the tape and the one-on-ones, it was like, oh, God. No. And then, for the D-backs, you're set up to fail with the D-backs. There was one guy, Greg Jr., I think, out of like one of the small schools, or Gregory Jr. or something. Just didn't. He looked like a fish out of water. Just couldn't cover anybody. Couldn't find the football. I don't think he's a draftable guy, but it's a tough week for these defensive backs because you don't have any help. It's one-on-one. It's just hard. Then we got some O-line, D-line, good, bad weeks. So for the O-lineman, Daniel Falele, I want to like him. I really, really want to like him. Minnesota guy. I'm a big fan of the Australian tackle for the Eagles that was like a Pro Bowler this year. I say I'm a big fan, and I can't think of his freaking name. It's a long show, a lot of names. But Jordan Mailata. Daniel Falele for the Gophers, like, good first day. On Monday when they showed up for weigh-ins, 6'8", like 36-inch arms, 380 pounds. Like, all right, let's go. Let's see this guy in action. And then it was not pretty. It was not pretty. He was like on his ass constantly, so his balance was bad. Slow feet don't eat. That was him all week. He was getting bull rushed and toppled over because he just wasn't moving his feet. Slow off the ball in the run game. Like, man, it was a bad week. It was a bad week for him. He'll still probably get drafted because of the recent success of a guy like Jordan Mailata and some of these developmental pieces, but I think he's got to slim down a little bit. He's not ready. He is not ready at all. And then, really disappointing week for Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan. He was like coming in. Everyone was like, he is top 3 on my radar because he's really athletic guy, former tight end. He's only been playing tackle for 2 years. Graded out really well per PFF at Central Michigan. There was like, this guy is probably a first, like coming in, it was like, this guy's probably a first rounder, and with a good week on one-on-ones, could be like a top 15 pick. And everyone wants to think of Lane Johnson, who had a similar career path, went from tight end to tackle, and had that athletic profile where he beefed up and no one could get through him or around him. And it was very clear to me that Bernard Raymond has only been playing tackle for 2 years. He had just terrible technique, leaning, letting guys beating him inside. Rough week. He's a project. Now, another guy that was kind of similar coming out was Brian O'Neill was a former tight end that converted to tackle, athletic guy. He could still test well, sneak into like the second, third round, and maybe a good offensive line coach can coach him up because he's got the tools. But yeah, he's not ready. I don't think you can draft him in the first round because if you draft a tackle in the first round, you're probably having to start him, and he's going to be a problem if you got to start him early. So not a top 50 player, that's for sure. Bernard Raymond lost a lot of stock. And then on the defensive line, just a couple names. Fedarian Mathis out of Alabama. You know, you're supposed to be this 5-star prospect that went to Alabama and just never grew, comes to the Senior Bowl, and he's just a guy. I don't think he's got the like football acumen. I don't think he understands his role, how to win. He's just kind of going through the motions. I was really underwhelmed by him. You know, I remember like 3 years ago, he was supposed to be like a top 10 pick, and he just never grew. And he doesn't look ultra athletic or anything either. So I don't think there's a whole lot there with Fedarian Mathis. And then the last guy here is Kingsley Enagbari out of South Carolina. He's a one-trick pony, but and you guys know I like power rushers a lot. I was a huge Rashawn Gary guy. But I don't think Enagbari has like elite get-off or elite power. He's like a decent power rusher with nothing else. And he's got no bend. I don't know. He's kind of like Montez Sweat coming out where like it could work. I don't know if he's as athletic as Montez Sweat was, though, who ran like in the 4.5s, I'm pretty sure. It's going to come down to testing for him and the Underwear Olympics to just kind of determine what his upside is because he's still incredibly raw. He just, every single rep was just going straight to the bull rush, and I think the offensive tackles caught on, and they were just anchoring down all the time. So I don't know. I've seen his name mentioned like in the first round sometimes, and I'm like, nah, I think he's probably more like a third round guy, just like a project, maybe a rotational power rusher to start, but he definitely didn't pop for me. And there are my Senior Bowl takeaways. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the show. I am going to cut it there. Not going to do any super chat questions or mailbag questions right now. Next week, Monday, going to have a mock draft up with some updated rankings, more strong opinions on these guys. Still trying to sort through all my first round rankings. I'm hoping tomorrow I can at least have a baseline opinion on everybody that's in the mock. And then later in the week, I'm hoping to have my top 10 quarterbacks video out as well. We are moving into the new house next Wednesday, so that's going to take priority over content. Excited to be in the new studio soon, the new setup, all gearing up for draft season. And again, guys, as I do my evals, you can follow along and get access to my draft board. You can support the channel, support the podcast on patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy, where you can get the Draft Insider package right now. And, you know, if you're just listening to the audio version here, thank you for tuning in. I do appreciate if you're on Spotify, iTunes, wherever it may be, please take a second to leave that review. It is the only way for this show to populate and basically be advertised out to other people. It's just the reviews. When someone types in NFL podcast, draft podcast, whatever it may be, you know, it's only going to get pushed up if it has really good reviews. So if you have a second to please leave a 5-star review. If you're, you know, waiting on a bus, waiting on an elevator, taking a few minutes to go to the bathroom, whatever it may be, I really appreciate you for leaving a review. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button. That's all I got for you guys today. Really good to be back, and we'll see you guys soon for more draft content. Peace out.